So firstly, this afternoon, I can of course affirm that the opposition supports the increase of the guaranteed minimum pension and the uprating of social security benefits as is usual. However, given that this debate is largely a formality and there will be no vote on these motions, it is a good opportunity to take a step back and reflect on the pensions and benefits system more broadly, albeit of course within the frame of these motions before us this afternoon. Now, first off, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to highlight what I call the benefits barbell. At one end, the working age welfare bill keeps getting heavier. On the other, the cost of public sector defined benefits pensions is eye-watering. Yet in the middle of these two heavy weights is the hard-working taxpayer straining under the load. Welfare and pensions both matters. They are pillars of a decent society, but it is Britain's taxpayers who do the heavy lifting. They are the ones who get up before dawn, commute in all weathers and keep the economy moving. Without their effort or even more government borrowing, there would be no welfare state at all. And we cannot pile more weight onto their shoulders indefinitely. The Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions has already admitted that the long-awaited Timms review will not involve making welfare savings and is now not likely to be published before 2027. It seems that this government is shunning any attempts at reform over the coming year. And yet again, it is the taxpayers who bear the cost of this delay. Right now, the UK is on the verge of becoming a welfare state with an economy attached. Over 40,000 people were signed off work every day by GPs over the last year, according to the Centre for Social Justice. Over 5 million people are claiming benefits with no work requirements, and that is equivalent to a population over half the size of London. Now, concerningly, Madam Deputy Speaker, this number includes more than 300,000 people aged 16 to 24, young people with promising lives ahead of them whose ambitions are being stifled by a benefit system which would rather write them off. Labour is presiding over a youth unemployment crisis and seems unable to offer long-term solutions. There are already nearly 1 million young people in the UK who are not in education, employment or training. Over 700,000 university graduates are out of work and on benefits. 1.5 years after taking office, this government is still failing to tame the runaway benefits bill and rising unemployment rates. By contrast, the Conservative plan is to get Britain working again, which will tackle youth unemployment by offering young people a first jobs bonus, which they can use to save for their first home. Now, living within our means is one of those sensible, mundane things which gives the Conservative Party its reputation as a safe pair of hands for the economy. Of course, making welfare savings is far less likely to grab headlines. Scrapping the two-child benefits cap or rolling out more free school meals is a far easier win. But getting the deficit under control is absolutely crucial to a healthy economy. When Conservatives took office in 2010, the government were running a deficit of 9%. By the time COVID struck, we had brought it down to under 1%. This, in turn, enabled us to provide generous support to individuals and businesses during lockdowns. Now, as I said in the debate on the two-child benefit cap last week, keeping the limit would have saved the taxpayer £2.4 billion in 2026-27, rising to £3.2 billion in 2030-31. Yet our current Prime Minister would rather throw some red meat to his backbenchers than exercise fiscal discipline. He has caved into their demands, even though scrapping the two-child benefit limit was previously ruled out by the Chancellor and was conspicuously absent from Labour's manifesto. Conservatives believe in fairness for the working parents who make difficult choices about whether they can afford another child. Many working families do not have incomes much higher than the threshold for universal credit, but are paying for others through their taxes. Why should we make these parents bear a double burden of supporting their own children as well as subsidising other people's? A fair system should not simply exempt families on benefits from making tough choices. Now, speaking of fairness, the issue of passported benefits desperately needs investigating. Last week, I highlighted the shocking statistic that 1 in 4 full-time UK workers would be better off on benefits than in work. But something that often gets overlooked is that people on universal credit also gain access to a raft of discounts and additional benefits, such as free prescriptions, discounted broadband, healthy food cards, and special savings accounts. There are over 20 of these schemes sprinkled across multiple government departments. Now, together, taken together, passported benefits give some families who are already on universal credit over £10,000 a year in extra support, costing the taxpayer over £10 billion, according to a new report from the think tank Onward. These benefits need rationalising and streamlining within universal credit, otherwise we will continue to face three serious problems. Firstly, these passported benefits disincentivise people from entering employment. Any sensible person would think twice about starting a job if they faced a cliff-edge denial of additional benefits worth thousands of pounds once their universal credit tapers away. Secondly, we have a two-tier system. As a result of these linked benefits, individuals just outside the universal threshold often face greater financial hardship than benefit claimants. And thirdly, for those who really do need these extra schemes, there is a labyrinth of bureaucracy which slows down the process of getting help. These piecemeal entitlements distort the system. From a quantitative perspective, it's hard to see which poverty interventions are actually having a positive effect. It is also incredibly difficult for everyone to see if this government is succeeding at reducing poverty. Now, I welcome the government's new emphasis on deep material poverty as a headline poverty metric. This is a far more holistic measure which captures how poverty impacts people's daily lives and whether they can afford necessities. Last week, we heard endlessly that the government's child poverty strategy and the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap will bring 500,000 children out of poverty. But it is worth noting that we are talking about relative poverty. This can never be eradicated because it refers to a household income below 60% of the median household income. The only way to reduce relative poverty is to raise the incomes of the poorest faster than the middle or compress the income distribution. An overemphasis on relative poverty has underpinned a misleading left-wing argument that exaggerates the need for income redistribution. I worry that we will end up paying people to be so-called middle class if we continue as we are. Now, at the heart of Conservative philosophy is a belief in personal responsibility, taking control of your future through hard work and aspiration. If we're serious about tackling child poverty long-term, it is vital to deal with the effects of intergenerational worklessness and not to just rely on social security. Children in long-term workless households are 4 times more likely to be materially deprived. They are 10% more likely to end up workless themselves. For every parent who does not go out to work, there is a child who misses seeing a positive example of work modelled to them. The early alarm clock, the daily routine, the reward for an honest day work, and the ability to save up to buy important things. Now, that's not to say that there aren't those in dire circumstances for a vast number of reasons, but ultimately, when we're looking at people in general, that is the reality we need to deal with. Under our watch, the number of children in workless households fell consistently. Under Labour, this number has reached a 9-year high, with 1.2 million children now living in homes where no parent has worked for over a year. Now, turning, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the topic of personal independent payments, I would like to ask the Minister about a disabled constituent I caught up with at the weekend. A veteran who served in the Royal Navy for 19 years and is now an unpaid carer for her elderly father. She works full-time, mainly from home, and commutes to London a few times a month. She had a Motability scooter, which enabled her to get to the office and around London when required. But after her last PIP review, which took place over the phone, she lost her higher rate of PIP and thus her scooter. She then received a puzzling letter from the Department for Work and Pensions, which wrongly claimed that full-time work indicated she had reasonable mobility, despite the fact that her entire home is adapted for her accessibility requirements. Now, my constituent is a highly capable woman who is skilled at advocating for herself as well as her father and indeed for her fellow veterans. But she admitted that she felt too stressed to open the letter for a few weeks, meaning that the reconsideration window had timed out by the time she fully processed the DWP's decision. For context, she has also been diagnosed with complex PTSD following a traumatic experience in the military and is currently on a long waiting list for treatment. Statistically, she is unusual. Fewer than 1 in 6 PIP claimants are in employment. So it seems bizarre that the DWP assessors are happy to downgrade someone in this situation who is in work and genuinely needs the higher rate of PIP to help her carry out that work, yet the department seems reluctant to stem the tide of benefits claims from people with less severe mental health issues. That is why a Conservative government will end sickness benefits for low-level mental health problems to ensure support is targeted to people who need it most. I welcome the government's commitment to increase the number of face-to-face PIP assessments to 30%, up from the very low rate of 5% in 2024, but I would urge them to be even more ambitious with their target to ensure that constituents like mine are accurately assessed and receive the help that they need. So in conclusion, as I return to the image I began with, the barbell is getting heavier by the year, with welfare on one side and pensions on the other. And still, the hard-working taxpayer stands in the middle, doing all the heavy lifting. And it's my belief the government is doing far too little to ease that pressure. Working families are paying the price for a system that grows ever more expensive, while true reform moves at a crawl. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's time for a welfare system that is fair to those who need to support and fair to those who pay for it.
Chair of the Select